Welcome to the PragerU podcast. I'm going to be one of your hosts, Omelette Bonobi, here down in the South.
Howdy. I'm here on the podcast.
Sheriff, oh no.
Oh, no.
What is that accent?
Cletus.
Oh my gosh.
It's like my southern, hillbilly accent.
You were doing much better about 5 minutes ago with that
I
one.
can do another accent.
Have you ever
There
been into
we
the South,
go.
Will?
I have been to the South. I've been all over the country. I've been to almost all 50 states.
So Will's like not a world traveler, but a U.S. traveler.
Yeah, I've never been out of the country, but I've been almost everywhere in the U.S.
I haven't been anywhere in the U.S. other than Florida, North Carolina, and California.
North Carolina.
North Carolina. Molasses pouring out the mouth in North Carolina.
What are we talking about today, Amala?
We've got 3 stories today. And our first one, again, a lot of these stories really infuriate the masses. And I'm assuming we're going to have a similar response there. But this is a story out of Canada, actually. We're not talking about the U.S. right now today. And this is about a pastor by the name of Artur Pawlowski, who's now been arrested by the Canadian police simply for holding church service. And if you're unfamiliar with this guy, Pastor Artur, he's been having church services throughout the COVID-19 lockdowns and the regulations over in Canada. He's specifically from a city called Calgary, which is a pretty large city within Canada. And
it's the largest city in the territory.
yes. So time and time again, he's been confronted by the police and law enforcement for holding these church services and allowing people to practice their faith under his leadership, people who are there by their own volition, their own choice. And finally, it has led to his arrest. So he's been arrested and charged with contempt by Canadian law enforcement. And here's a video of him getting taken down. Here we go. Now, you might not be able to hear them, but he's calling them Nazis. And his brother is also being arrested here in this video.
You are the Nazis.
That's pretty good.
Get out. I love this guy. He's amazing. He did an interview that just came out, actually. I don't know if you guys listened to it as well, which was basically his talking from prison. They did an interview. Somehow they got an interview while he was in prison, was able to talk to him. He said he was being treated horribly. He was sleeping on the ground on concrete for the last night. It's just been a horrible circumstance for him. And this is all just for standing up for his values. I think he was out on bail. Right, so he was out on bail already,
Yes.
and they said, no, you can't have any more, like some of the bail conditions were like, you can't hold any more services for your church, and he said, to hell with that, and just did more church services. So now they arrested him again, and so he's in jail again. It's like, as many times as they try and knock you down, you keep going. It's like the people at Tin Horn Flats in Burbank. They kept trying to shut them down, and they kept saying no. Like, just because you want us to do this, government, doesn't mean I'm going to continually bow over to you. Just because you say that I have to do this doesn't mean I'm going to comply. It's like there are things that our country does, and this is in Canada too, things that Canada does that are not right. People just think like the government is their end-all be-all, and if the government makes a law or the government makes some sort of statement about something that you have to do, that it's like you have to just immediately bend over backwards and follow it.
Yep.
Which it sucks that that's the way that we are. And I'm not trying to advocate for you guys to go and do anything horribly illegal or anything, okay? That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that there is tyranny out there. And I think that more people in governments around the world where there has been tyranny, if more people stood up against these tyrannical governments, then maybe things wouldn't have gone so bad. But people are scared to stand up, especially in like very leftist places like in Canada, here in California. Like people are incredibly scared to ever say anything against it.
Yeah, there are times in your life where you assess the situation, and there are times that you fight, and this pastor is doing that, and he's continually held his church services. He's continually let the people who want to worship and practice their faith into his church and allowed them to do so, and he has been met time and time again with law enforcement and these strict regulations, and he continues to fight. So kudos to him for doing what he's doing. He was fighting while he was arrested, just calling out these police officers for what they're doing, calling out the city of Calgary for doing what they're doing, and he's going to continue to fight outside of this. So he's actually going to be planning to sue the city of Calgary for what has happened to him, for not allowing him to worship. So you can donate to him at savearthur.com if you would like to get involved with that. But he is on the front lines fighting this, as we all should be.
Yes, we all should be. I'm sick of people complaining and then not fighting. Yep. I quit school, and Amla moved out here to Los Angeles, and all the other people who work at PragerU. Like, people have given up so much to be fighters here, and it's like the least that other people can do is also fight. You're either a fighter, or you help the fighters, or you don't do anything, right? Which category do you want to be in? You're either going to be a fighter, help the fighters, or not do anything. You don't want to look back on your life and say, I didn't do anything. You want to be someone who supported these people or yourself was one of these fighters. So think about that when you're watching this video right now, and think about what kind of category you fall into and if that's how you want your life to look like. This guy is a fighter. He's a fighter. I'm a fighter. I want to continue to push against tyranny and things that don't make any sense, that aren't based in science. I mean, these COVID restrictions that are still going on in America, that are going on in Canada, they're not based in science, okay? They're not based in science whatsoever. If they were based in science, then there wouldn't be so much control. There wouldn't be such an agenda. There wouldn't be such a political divide in this country if it was actually about science. If it was about science, then conservatives and liberals should be able to come together and agree on everything because the science will be settled, right? That's what you always hear from the left. The science is settled. But if the science was really settled and this wasn't just about an agenda, then everyone would agree. At least the majority of people would agree. So you know that's not what it's about. It is about control from these governments, and they don't want people worshiping as well. That's another big thing to think about. They don't want people worshiping, okay? Back in, I think I've mentioned this stat before, but it's back in 1999, there were 70% of people in America who said that they went to church regularly. Now in 2020, I think it was in the survey I was taking, or 2019, it was down to 45% of people regularly attend church. They are actively trying to get God out of America. That is their plan. I mean, there is nothing more that they want to do. This is why a church like Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills, where Jack Hibbs is, he's the guy who baptized me, he's an amazing guy. Like why his church, when he decided to stay open, just blew up with numbers of people coming and watching his church. Because people are hungry for this information, and they see the agenda that the government and the left has for taking God out of this country, and they want to push against it. They want to fight against it. And that's what you have to do. You have to be one of these fighters too.
It's true, and I'm coming from somebody like me who doesn't even subscribe to a faith at the moment. I call myself agnostic right now. I can actively recognize that we are going towards a increasingly secular society, and there is a full-on attack against Christianity and Judeo-Christian values, and this is part of that. And it's so interesting that they want to go and arrest this pastor for simply facilitating people practicing their faith. And all the people who come to his church service, they're not there by force. He's not going to their homes, yanking them out of their homes and taking them to church. They're showing up, like I said, on their own volition, by their own choice. And that is a choice that we should all be able to make in regard to our health, in regard to our wellness, whether or not we want to go out and practice our faith, whether or not we want to go and pray with the people in our communities. And they're trying to hold this man back from doing that. I believe they've even fenced off his church where he practices his faith. So now his congregation is meeting in secret and finding places where they can meet without law enforcement being involved, without them having their church service shut down, because that is what they have been forced to do. And it is a sad state in society when you have to secretly practice your faith for fear of being engaged by law enforcement and possibly being arrested for doing so. It's a very, very sad state.
Yeah, you hear about that in like communist China, you know, that they're hunting down Christians and they have to meet in secret. But this is Canada, supposedly like Western free, you know, freedom loving country. But what I love about this pastor and what Will's talking about standing up is that, you know, when you stand up, you expose tyranny for what it is. So you have to, you know, refuse to do the ridiculous thing that they're making you do and refuse to comply, and then make them drag you out in the street and show how tyrannical they really are. And that's the same thing that we saw with the restaurant owner here in LA of Tin Horn Flats. He just was like, I'm going to keep serving burgers and beer and you guys can come stop me if you want to. And it got to the point where the police literally put sandbags in front of the door of his office and like put chains around it, and he would just snap the chain and remove the sandbags, and then they arrested him for taking the sandbags out. It's like when you refuse to just, you know, if you just are like a little quiet, compliant mouse and just comply with every little thing and preemptively just, well, I don't want to make waves or whatever, this isn't the hill to die on, nothing's going to happen. But when you start to stand up, you expose tyranny for what it is, the evil that it is, and that's when, you know, people start to wake up.
I don't like sand. It's rough and coarse and gets everywhere.
That'd be great. Will with the Star Wars prequel transition.
Let me say one thing that I've actually been thinking about a lot recently in the last week. I said this for the first time in my Texas A&M speech, and I think it's important. And I think it kind of relates to this, just kind of what Taylor was saying about standing up. I'm pretty done with states. I'm done with states in general. Okay. I think people put too much emphasis on saving states. Like we have to save Texas, we have to save Florida, all these different things. And right now, I'm of the persuasion that we don't need to worry about states so much. By 2024 and definitely 2028, Texas is going to be blue. There's going to be no more Texas. This is my prediction because of first of all, the illegal immigrants who are coming into Texas. Secondly, the just universities breed leftists and they all come out and then they vote. They're very left. And so I think that we need to worry more about communities than we need to worry about entire states, because it's very hard for a state exactly like Texas or California or Florida to have a whole state come together and be like of the same opinion, right? Or believe the same things. And we're seeing the trans stuff in schools and the critical race theory and hating on police, all these horrible things that we see. What we need to do is find communities that are already conservative and have conservatives move to these communities and strengthen them. Strengthen conservative communities that are already conservative, right? You get a school board that's all conservative. You have a mayor that's all conservative. You have local city council, because it's like, think about in like Minneapolis, right? The state governor isn't the one who defunded the police in that city. It was the local city council who did it, right? So we're thinking about, oh, these states are all so blue and stuff, but it's like in that state you have red communities, more leftist communities. It's like find the communities that are actually supporting your values and focus on those. Don't just focus on like the whole state, because the whole state, it's like, well, what are you going to do as one person? It's like almost impossible to change. That's my persuasion. I think that we should be looking more towards finding communities that are smaller and really strengthen those places, because the states are lost. All of the states are going to be lost.
It's very true. I mean, this leftist hypocrisy and hysteria and ideology has really infiltrated nearly every facet of the society that we live in now, and it doesn't matter whether or not you're in a red state or a blue state. It is everywhere, and everybody's talking about it. And when I moved out here to LA, I knew what to expect. I knew what the politics was like here. I knew how left-leaning this area was. But what has kept me sane is the community that I've had around me and my family. So that's two things that we really need to hone in on and remember as conservatives, is that you can choose who you surround yourself with, and the stronger your community is, the stronger they are based in your values and your moral set, the better off that you're going to be. So I completely agree with Will in that we should not be focusing on moving to freedom states or fixing blue states as much as we should be focusing on fixing our own communities on the small scale.
Right, like red and blue is like relative. I mean, it almost means nothing at this point, because you go to any city that has a university in it and it's blue. You go to any major urban area, it's blue. I mean, literally any single one in the country. I'm sure maybe there's a few that are a better mix, somewhere like Nashville, but even like somewhere like Nashville, I mean, it's pretty damn blue. You know, every single urban city pretty much in this country is blue. So it's like the whole left versus right thing when looking at states, it's all relative, because it's the major cities and the university cities that are all on the left, and then all the more rural places are going to be more right. That's just how it is. So it's like strengthen the communities that we already know are conservative, and at a point, it's like, what more can you do? Like, what more can you do? What can I do? I have this feeling, and it's like sad that I think this way, but I don't mean to be pessimistic at all. But it's like, what can I do here in Los Angeles to like fix California? You know, like what am I going to do? I don't understand. I'm of course influencing people and getting my culture out there and having it so that everyone can have these conservative values and stuff. But you know, it's like, how much can like I go and do to make California, like everyone here, conservative? You know,
it's very true. It's a valid question, and it's a very tough one to answer. And like you said, in the meantime, while we are trying to figure that out, focus on your communities. You know, find people who support you. I
think that's the best move. For sure.
Yeah, and to that point, like when the founders intended us to have like a federalist, like, you know, decentralized society, but right. And what complements that is, a nuclear family, a system in which people that have, you know, familial traditional values who live out those values in strong communities. And that's the first line of defense of the safety net. That's the, you know, for social issues, if you have a problem, you know, it's best for the people close to them to help them out. And that's much more efficient and much more effective than, you know, having a bigger and bigger government. And when you try to solve all of society's problems at that level, it just becomes cumbersome and ineffective when then power is concentrated, and that's where you open the door to tyranny, as we're seeing now. So
it's so true. Yeah, that's where we differ on the left and on the right, is that the left tries to do these large sweeping movements that alter all of society, and they use the words transformative because everybody's supposed to change their mindset and mold themselves to what they believe. While on the right, we really focus on ourselves as an individual, who we are within our communities. Are we setting a good example for our families, for our children, for our peers? And I think that's what we really need to hone in on right now.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. Like I said, we used to have all these sort of unbiased facets of society. Our entertainment used to be generally unbiased, and everybody could enjoy, going and watching a comedy show or watching a cartoon. And it really has infiltrated everything that we consume. And that leads us into our next story, which is with Walt Disney Corporation. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with this story, Christopher Rufo, who is a self-proclaimed expert on CRT and has studied it very fervently and writes lots about it. You should look up his work. But he is sort of whistleblown on Walt Disney as a corporation because they've been putting out this sort of training for their employees that states that America was founded on systemic racism, as he writes here, and encourages employees to complete a white privilege checklist and separate minorities into racially segregated affinity groups. So I'm going to show you a couple pictures from this sort of guidebook that they've given to their employees. So it's Reimagining Tomorrow, Where We All Belong, What Can I Do About Racism, an anti-racism discussion guide. This is what Disney employees are doing. And here's the course title, Allyship for Race Consciousness. And some of the things that they advocate here are just completely insane. So in this little guidebook, they write, recognize your colleagues are also processing the ways in which the pandemic is disproportionately affecting the Black community. If you are feeling confused, shocked, or have recently awakened to systemic racism, recognize that this is probably not new for your Black and African American colleagues. Avoid messages like, I cannot believe this is happening. The murders of Breonna Taylor, Sean Reed, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Tony McCade, Nina Pop, Rayshard Brooks, Adam Traore are all countless other are parts of a long history of systemic racism and transphobia. In solidarity with U.S. protests, we are seeing similar protests due to police brutality targeting to Black people around the world. The current unrest represents a tipping point and a heightened awareness of the movement. This is what people are talking about at Walt Disney World.
I miss the days when Simba was taking Scar over and retaking Pride Rock. That's the Disney that I remember back in my day. Or Aladdin,
Or Little Mermaid.
It was a great movie. A Little Mermaid. I love Little Mermaid.
Disney Channel. When as kids we could just watch shows without being indoctrinated, and as employees at Disney you could just simply do your job, whatever that may be, without being worried about leftist ideology and whether or not you're offending people of color within your employees, within your colleagues. It just does not make sense to me that we've allowed this to happen, and somebody needs to speak out about this, and we need to start actually taking action and not supporting the businesses and the corporations that push this ideology.
Yeah, I don't trust anything that Disney has put out in the last 5 or 6 years.
Have you seen Star Wars?
Yeah. I stopped watching them, but
they're so horrible.
Yeah. I know, man. They're terrible. And just it's one thing. Like Disney used to be like the place, the company that takes these big archetypal stories that contain, like, if you listen to Jordan Peterson, these deep embedded truths about what the hero's journey is, what it means to live out, be the call to adventure and all that type of stuff. And they just took those stories and expressed them in beautiful ways in some of those classic ones like Pinocchio or whatever it might be. And now, instead of just simply telling the stories of humanity, they're preaching social engineering. They're preaching the way that they want society to be, and they're making films with a political agenda. And if you're awake to it, it's just so obvious, and it just ruins your ability to enjoy them.
Well, what's weird is that Disney has been around for 100 years, something like that.
Very long time.
Close to it. I don't know exactly when. Steamboat Willie. That's when he first came out. That was the first
Song
Disney
of the
thing,
South.
right? So Steamboat, all that stuff has been around for a very long time. Disney's been around for a very long time. In the civil rights era, Disney was making movies back then in the 1960s and 70s. And I would highly doubt, I could be wrong, but I'm going to make a very educated guess and say that in the 1960s with the civil rights movement, Disney did nothing to promote with their employees some sort of civil rights activism, right? And that was in a time in America when America was a much more racist place. People were more racist back then. It's obvious that people were more racist back then. And now look at America. I mean, it's really the most least racist civilization in America right now than ever.
Yep.
Ever in human history. There's never been a less racist time. There's never been a better time to be a Black person, a gay person, a lesbian, a trans person, whatever you are. There's never been a better time in the world to be one of those people, to be a minority, and especially not living in America. But they can't come out now because there's nothing else to worry about. And so this is their new fight. You know, this is their new fight to make it seem like they're actually trying to do something. But they've ran out of like good stories, I guess. And so this is what they have to resort to now.
Yeah, and you can tell, I mean, they explicitly write in their messaging that they're using this in the films that they create and in the content that they create as a corporation. So that's something to keep in mind for all the parents out there who are watching this, that you should not support an organization or a company that is like this, because they will be taking part in indoctrinating your children and pushing messages. And I've pulled up a clip right here from their little guidebook here. Looking forward, equity, not equality. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, there is a vast difference between the word equality and equity. So in America, we talk about equal opportunity, how we want everybody to have an equal opportunity in this country to pursue their goals, to pursue their dreams, to have the American dream. And that is what equality really means, is having the opportunity to do the things that you want to do. Now, equity, although it sounds similar, is a very, very different mission statement. And that is in regard to equality of outcome, meaning no matter who you are, no matter what you do, no matter what you pursue, you should have the same outcome as anybody else. And it's just not a fair point to make on Disney's part. And like I said, they're using this in the content that they're creating. So this is the message that's going to be pushed on your children, who should really have no part in this discussion. When I was a child, I was not worried about equality and equity and politics and right and left. I was worried about playing or having friends, watching TV, just doing things that kids do. And now we have corporations like Disney who have an active influence in the way that your children think and the way that your children develop. And this is what they're working on behind the scenes.
Oh, all I could think about how cute Jasmine was in Aladdin.
Right?
That was like all I could think about when watching those movies. I wasn't thinking like, oh, they're in Arabia and they're Muslim, so horrible racism, xenophobia, or anything. You know, I was like, it's so stupid to think that any child cares about any of this stuff. You know, the only reason why kids care about racism is because you've made them care about racism. You had to teach them all of these racist things and tell them how horrible white people are and everything else. No kid cares about this. Have you ever met a kid before? What do they want to do? They want to eat poop or whatever else.
And play.
Whatever else stupid kids do.
Right.
You know, which we've talked about.
That was oddly specific. Well, was there something in your childhood you want to tell us about?
Never. No. Listen, I just heard stories from your mom actually about you. No, but kids are really dumb, right? And that's all they care about. They care about playing and having fun with their friends and even learning. Like, kids like to learn new things, but it's not, they don't want to be hateful or feel like they're hated. That's scary for a child. And you are scaring children when you are pushing this on them and making their lives worse. You're making their lives worse. It's like in regards to climate change. It was like 60% of children in Great Britain have climate change related nightmares. It's like that never happened before.
No, it didn't.
And now you're pushing this on children, making it so that they're so scared and sad. And it's your fault. It's your fault our next generation is going to be so screwed up, Disney, because you push it on kids.
They do.
Psychos.
Yes, and when you look into these corporations and these companies, we did a recent story on this, what was it, a few months back, about Coca-Cola and them going woke and them putting out a guidebook to their employees telling them to be less white. And that is really an underlying factor in everything that these corporations are doing. So there's one more thing I want to show you from this guidebook, and that is a little privilege check that they're having their employees take.
Oh, that was actually in the back of this? I thought that was like another thing that
was in this guidebook sent out by Walt Disney Corporation.
All right, let's test my privilege.
Let's see the privilege here. So I'm going to read a few of these just because they are absolutely insane. But I want to point out that the very first thing that you check off in regard to your privilege is I am white. And that automatically sets you ahead of everybody else according to Disney Corporation.
Well, Taylor, looks like we're pretty privileged.
Yeah, it looks like I'm being held back in this country.
Do I even have to do the rest of the sheet? I feel like that's all I need to do.
Honestly, yeah.
You're toast, Will. Your privilege is just
I know. Through the roof.
It's set, yeah. And all of these things are just inherently anti-white, and that seems to be an underlying factor, like I said, in all of this sort of woke ideology that comes out.
Go through some of the other ones.
Exactly. So here's some of the other ones. I have never been the only person of my race in a room.
I've been the only person of my race in a room.
As have I. As has Taylor, I'm sure.
I don't know about Taylor.
I mean, missionary kid living in Panama, like walking through the mall, I'm literally like the only white guy. So. Yeah.
Taylor has a very cool story. If you guys didn't know, he traveled the world. He's very cool, doing missionary work and stuff.
Yeah, one day we'll tell the story.
Yeah, one day,
but not today.
Okay,
but not today. He's not ready for
Taylor
that.
Doesn't want to indulge us with that.
Let's see some more.
Yeah,
people want to hear about critical race theory from Disney. They don't want to hear about
They do.
Fine.
You're like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Here's another one on here that apparently means you have privilege. I have had an unpaid internship, or I've had multiple unpaid internships.
I had an unpaid internship with PragerU.
That's a marker of privilege?
That is
That's
a
what
marker
I said.
of privilege.
I thought it was like the opposite.
Nope.
Yeah, now I thought like unpaid internships are like under fire now for being like racist and they're
well, in
not
California,
paying the
you
minimum
can't
wage.
have an unpaid internship anymore. California, you're not allowed. You have to pay your interns, which is stupid. You're an intern. Why would I pay you?
It doesn't
To
really
get
make
coffee?
sense either. Yeah, pay you to learn
I'm
from
giving
me.
you valuable job experience.
Like, how are you supposed to start climbing up the corporate ladder if you aren't willing to like start
to
at
work.
the bottom?
And that's the thing about the left. They're not willing to work. That just seems to be part of the deal
you can
here.
never get here until you start it from the bottom.
Wow. Started from
My
the
whole
bottom.
team
Now
did.
we're
It took
here.
you guys a second.
No, well, you said it in reverse order. You
I
didn't
know.
say it right.
I know. Well, I snuck it in there.
It did. Okay, so let's see. I have traveled internationally.
No.
Nope. Taylor has, obviously, because he did his missionary work.
Yeah.
I went to summer camp.
I've been to summer camp.
I've been to summer camp.
I went to privilege camp.
I've been indoctrinated with your
Yeah.
I went to Camp Privilege. And of course, there's a bunch of other ridiculous things on here. I've never been shamed for my body type. I consider myself to be physically attractive. I can afford to go see a therapist.
Wait, are you saying that some black people don't see themselves as physically attractive?
I guess that's what they're trying to say.
I've met lots of black people who think they're super hot.
Actually, studies show that African Americans and people of color have some of the highest self-esteem in the country. So,
that's great. That's great news.
exactly. So why would they represent them as anything different than that?
I don't know.
Because they want to push the victim card and the victim mentality. And that's been something that I've experienced throughout my entire life. Yet I say this today, it has never been a better time to be a black female in America. Just like Will said, it has never been a better time. And to somehow sell the story that it isn't, that we have not made progress, that we are not seen as equals in this society is just ridiculous. And that's why we wanted to talk about this Disney store today.
That privilege list is fun. I like to look through. One of the things, like I've done some pretty good things for myself. I'm fairly successful, I will say. Done a lot of good work, and I do well for myself, all of this. But, you know, it wasn't always like that for me. And so the whole white privilege stuff, when I would go on campus and talk to people and get yelled at and get called all these horrible names about my white privilege and everything, it was just funny to me. I don't need to divulge my entire life story to you guys, but it's just funny that people think that they can know who you are by some stupid checklist or just by looking at the color of your skin.
Yep.
That's called racism, you idiot, you absolute moron, that you think you can look at me in the face and I'm white and you say, oh, you have all this privilege just because of the color of your skin? Screw you. You suck. Like, how can you say that to me? How can you say that to me? If I came up to someone, if I saw Amla for the first time and I was like, oh, you're dumb because of the color of your skin.
Yep.
Just based off of what you look like. Is that not racist? Of course it's racist. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. The left are the real racists in this country. The fact that they have a checklist like that and come up to people and talk to them about their whiteness and think that you are something else just because of the color of your skin is what racism is. Yep. That is racism.
It is so true. And it's on both sides of the coin. They look at white people and they automatically assume that you have some sort of privilege, that you've never worked for anything in your life, that somebody helped you get to where you are. And then they look at people like me and they say, well, you're too stupid to get a voter ID, or we need to help you get into college, or you're going to be oppressed by the police, or you're going to have a harder time getting a scholarship or finding a job. And it's just so blatantly racist to assume that about somebody simply by looking at their skin color or looking at what gender they are. And it makes absolutely no sense. And Disney was called out for this by Christopher Rufo and by a bunch of people on the internet who got wind of this. And they issued a statement recently. So here's the statement that Disney has issued. These internal documents are being deliberately distorted as reflective of company policy. Deliberately distorted. How so? They simply released the guidebook that you give to your employees. There's no distortion. They didn't rewrite your words. This is what you're giving to your employees when they start working at Disney. So they say when in fact their purpose was to allow diversity of thought and discussion on the incredibly complex and challenging issues of race and discrimination that we as a society and companies nationwide are facing.
Beta.
And again, it's just pushing that false narrative.
Yeah, it is. They're trying to, I don't know, they want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to walk back and say, oh, we're doing it for diversity of thought. Because they didn't think that these documents were going to get leaked. You know, they never think that the documents are going to get leaked or anyone's going to see it aside from the people who are already being hired. So then once they get leaked, they're like kind of embarrassed because obviously conservative media hates this kind of stuff and we want to talk about it.
Yep.
So they try and make it seem like they're open and this is just a discussion on racism when it's like it's not a discussion on racism. If one of the people who is going through this training at Disney doesn't align with what you're pushing on your training, then they won't get the job, or they're going to be fired. Or, and if anything, if they lie about it, and they're going to be silenced the entire time while they're working for your company. So they can try and say like they're playing both sides and so open to everything, but we know they're not. Why don't they make a new Disney movie about a conservative protagonist? He's a conservative polar bear.
Yeah.
And he's ashamed by the other polar bears for his conservative views because he's a populist and he's tired of them complaining about ice caps that aren't really melting.
Right. This is just oh no, we were trying to quietly indoctrinate our employees and now it's been released to the public. And they don't apologize. So I'll go ahead and read you the second paragraph of their statement. That's what we'll call it because it's not an apology. The Disney brand has a long history of inclusivity, with stories that reflect acceptance and tolerance and celebrate people's differences, as we have consistently demonstrated in such popular films as Moana, Coco, Black Panther, Soul, and Raya the Last Dragon. And as a global entertainment company, we are committed to continuing to tell stories that reflect the rich diversity of the human experience. The Walt Disney Corporation.
As long as we're not representing the experience of conservative people.
Yeah,
Exactly.
As long as we're not representing you, I mean, that's fine. We're just
Right?
representing, black trans lesbians, and then we're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, notice how none of the films that they mentioned have anything to do with white people or anything to do with...
Also, it says long history of inclusivity. Those are all in the last 5 years.
They are.
Like those are movies that came out.
They didn't mention Mulan, which isn't that considered racist now?
Right.
But they had Aladdin, Mulan. Those are the old school ones.
Those movies,
but now those are problematic for some reason.
I mean, Aladdin, Tarzan, Mulan. These are way better stories of human character because they don't have any sort of forced message inside of them. And and then they get mad the whole Moana thing. If any little girl dresses up as Moana, it's cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's so. I don't know. It's all stupid. It's so dumb.
And again,
it's yeah. Go ahead.
they don't apologize. They double down. They double down on their messaging.
There are shippers, carriers.
We got an ad playing on that article. But yeah, they double down on their messaging. They don't care. They say, oh, well, this got leaked and you guys distorted the messaging and it's not truly reflective of what we were trying to teach our employees. And we're going to continue to do so as we have been doing thus far.
You don't like it? Well, too bad. Guess what?
Exactly.
Simba's gay. So take that, conservatives.
And I am seeing some comments of people saying, well, why do you guys have such a problem with diversity and stuff like that? But that's precisely the problem, is that this isn't about, they even said, they put it in the veneer of this language of, oh, we're promoting diversity of thought or we're trying to represent everyone. That's not what they're doing. They're pushing down this one way of thinking of critical race theory that says, everything's endemically racist, you're a victim, and it's brainwashing with the one point of view that they have of the world. And if you don't think like this, then you're the bad guy, you're wrong. And if you don't accept this worldview that we're pushing, and they're trying to hide it with this soft sounding language, but the reality is they're pushing propaganda.
It's not about diversity. Listen, again, I loved Aladdin. Okay, again, some Arabian dude in the Middle East, right? Or Mulan, the original Mulan, about Chinese people and a woman, right? And you love that movie. It's I don't care about diversity. I don't care about you having that in a movie. No one cares about that stuff. It's when you're pushing it for your political gain, and then especially you're pushing it on children, which is vile. I mean, first and foremost, it's the most vile thing you can do is push propaganda and horrible things at children. But it's obviously not about having women in movies or having black people or people of a different religion or race. That stuff doesn't matter to us. It's about if it's genuine. It's about if it's genuine. That's why people hated the new Star Wars movies. Because there was Princess Leia in the first ones, right, who was a badass hero. And then in the prequels, Padme was kind of cool. I mean, kind of. But she was kind of badass.
You're breaking my heart.
Yeah. You're leading God.
Alma's laughing. She hasn't watched Star Wars yet. So
no, but it's those were cool women that were just cool women, and there was nothing trying to prove that oh, women can do all this that they can do. It was just they were cool women. That's just how it was. And then in the next one, it's the new ones that they made. They're trying to make it seem like this Mary Sue can do all these different things.
Raised a super fighter in her first fight.
I know. So you can tell that it's not genuine. It's only to push their agenda. That's the difference.
And then the trip to the little weapons manufacturer world, and they insert this whole anti-capitalist thing that had nothing to do with the plot, just to have a little anti-capitalist.
Yeah,
thing. It's so obvious that they're just inserting their worldview into this stuff, and that's what it compromises the honesty of the work and the integrity of it. And so it's no longer art. When you have art or when you have a medium that's with an agenda that you're pushing, that you're creating, then that's propaganda. That's not art.
Exactly.
Right, and they had the two chicks kissing at the end of the last one. The two lesbians, And it's like they put that in just to show that they're so woke.
Right.
It's like people have been watching Will and Grace for years, okay?
Yep.
It's like people didn't really have a problem with that. It was just a show. But when
Right.
you force it on people and say, okay, you have to think this way and we're putting this in only to virtue signal, then there's a problem.
That's why no one's watching the Oscars and all that stuff. They're putting this with these quotas of like, you have to have this thing represented and this piece. And it's like, it's a manufactured reality that isn't even correspondent to like the actual occurrence of, gay people, trans people, whatever in the real world. It's this manufactured thing in the movies so that they're putting out this thing. So they make the world seem like it's this way, and they're not reflecting the real world.
It's true. It's like diversity is a great thing. America has always been the melting pot. It will always be so. And we appreciate people of all skin colors, whatever their ideology may be, whatever their faith may be, whatever their sexual orientation may be. But when you sell it to people under the veneer of things like critical race theory or the victimhood mentality or the false narrative of white privilege, you are doing something that is detrimental to society. And to have a corporation that is specifically geared towards children who is pushing this very same ideology is a horrible thing. And for people who can't recognize that, or for people who get tricked by the narrative that they spin to you, it's something that we need to recognize and we need to solve and we need to fight back against. Because if we allow this to happen under the umbrella of diversity of thought, this is what we're going to fall victim to. Critical race theory and this victimhood mentality that is being pushed on people of color and women in this country. And that's exactly what it is. It's being sold to you under a false veneer. And that's what it is. And that's what we're trying to expose to you. It has nothing to do with diversity whatsoever. Anyways, that was my speech on that. Our last story for you today has to do with unemployment in America as of today. Now, this article here says April jobs report disappoints. What happened and how did economists get it so wrong?
How did they, Amala? How did economists get it so wrong? Huh?
Well, let me tell you.
This is like our overdone radio show. Oh, really, Amala? Tell us more about this fascinating
You
story.
won't believe what this economist said. Doctors hate him.
Doctors hate it.
So believe it or not, in our nation of stimulus checks and elevated unemployment payments, we are seeing a decrease in people wanting to work, a decrease in, people entering the job market. And I wonder why that might be.
People who would make $32,000 a year, roughly, are better off staying unemployed.
Yep.
They're better off staying unemployed because they'll make that much doing nothing and getting money from the government. And that's what is happening. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. The people would rather refuse not to work, or they refuse to work because the government's just going to pay them everything. I mean, my mom, she, without divulging again too much of what she does, but she's a nurse and she works with people who are addicted to drugs. And so they come in and they get methadone. If you guys don't know what methadone is like a thing you give to drug addicts essentially to try and wean them off of the drug. And instead what they do, they take the money that they get from the state, from Medicaid and all this, and they buy more drugs. And then they get free drugs, and then they're on unemployment, and they get all this money and they don't work. And they get all this stuff from the state. And it's like, you understand that we are paying for this. All of you guys watching right now, hopefully, I hope you guys watching are people who work.
Yes, hopefully.
That, if you're not working, you should go and get a job. Okay? Go get a job, lazy people. But if you're like, we pay for all of this out of our taxes. Why do I work so hard? Why do I do what I do to have half of my salary every single year taken out by taxes to pay it to lazy clowns who refuse to work? I get that some people are, of course, disabled or have some sort of extenuating circumstances, and we want to take care of these people, okay? I'm not saying leave everyone out to dry. But there are multiple stories that you can find online and just talking to people of people who just refuse to work because why would they? Why would they work?
You almost can't blame people because the way this system is set up, why would you go work? Why would you go take a minimum wage or low paying job when you can just sit on your butt and get more money from the government? And I think if you guys in the comments know someone who's, or know people who are doing this, go ahead and share those stories. But I personally know multiple people who have not worked in over a year because they're getting so much. Will's saying, he just took a bad sip of water over there or something. You're mic number one. It's really coughing up a storm over there.
Sorry, guys. Oh, my goodness. I just choked on my water.
But you make a very valid point, and it's if we look back and what happened in the past year or so, you had people, folks at home, who were making minimum wage, maybe a little higher than that, who were then given $1,200 to $400 worth of stimulus checks. And in my home state of Florida, our unemployment was raised not by $300 a week, but $600 a week. So people were sitting at home making far more than they would ever make if they were working their normal day-to-day job. And that's not something that's conducive to getting people to enter the workplace. And I'm not surprised that people don't want to go back to work because they're making so much more money than they would be making just by sitting at home and doing whatever they're doing there. And Bank of America has done a recent analysis of all of the numbers in terms of employment that have been going out and circulating right now. And 4.6 million workers left the workforce during the pandemic. Only half of those people are expected to jump back into the workforce and start working again.
I don't want to pay taxes anymore.
Right?
I'm also dying of coughing, but yeah, I have no want to ever pay taxes again. I'm sure everyone feels that way, but just hearing things like this and just makes me like, I don't know why. I don't know why I have to pay for these people. I don't get it. It's like, imagine like this whole free healthcare thing. And like, this is another thing that I brought up before, but like free healthcare, it's like, okay, imagine I'm a healthy individual or mildly healthy individual, but it's like, I don't smoke cigarettes, all that kind of stuff. I eat pretty clean foods. I'll probably live for a while. It's like, imagine some dude who's obese, he's fat, and he smokes cigarettes and he gets lung cancer. And then I then have to pay for his lung cancer chemotherapy, for his treatment. Why am I responsible for the bad choices that this man made? I don't know if that sounds heartless, but I feel like it's common sense and what everyone's thinking in the back of their mind. I mean, why do I have to pay for this person's health care? They made bad choices in their life that led them to that decision, and then I'm responsible for it? This is the exact same thing. If someone chooses not to work, or they made bad decisions in their life that got them unemployed, I don't feel like I'm responsible for them. I should be responsible for myself. Again, for talking before, my communities. I don't know why I'm paying for all these people. I don't know why I'm paying for illegal immigrants coming into this country and paying for their health care. People who aren't even citizens of this country. We are wasting so much money in taxes. It's absolutely insane. I don't know why we pay so much. And it's because our politicians don't care. Our politicians don't care whatsoever. So they continue to do these things and they get away with it because most people have no idea what's going on. Most people have no idea where our tax dollars go. I guarantee you that if you actually looked down and broke down where our tax dollars go, you would be disgusted and horrified at the sheer waste of what happens with those dollars.
To me, it comes back to like what Dennis Prager says in one of the 5-minute videos. I forget which one at the moment, but does it feel good or does it do good? And, everything is about incentives. And right now it's like politicians are incentivized to promise free money to people, free everything. And people are incentivized to support that because it feels good to support it and it feels good to make those promises. But then the big question is, does it do good? And in the big picture, when you factor in all the trade-offs and what you're actually doing, and, by giving people money, you're incentivizing them not to work. And everything comes down to incentive. It's almost like you need a system that takes advantage of people's incentives and incentivizes them to create value for society and take responsibility for themselves. And
wow, Taylor, what is this system that you talk about, huh?
Yeah.
It starts with cap. No, there's no cap in capitalism.
Prager's new slogan.
Yeah. We need a shirt that says like capitalism, no cap or something.
Yeah, right.
We'll work on it.
Yeah. Honestly. And yeah, like
Send
you said,
us some mock-ups, people.
It's a testament because you have all these left-leaning politicians who are pushing for UBI, universal basic income, and this was essentially an experiment in that. Look at all the people who sat at home with their stimulus checks, with their elevated unemployment, and have now chosen not to re-enter the job market. So for those of you who think universal basic income is this grand idea and that we should implement it here in the United States, this has quite literally disproven you wrong just with these numbers alone. Like I said, 4.6 million people exited the workforce and only about 2.3 of those are expected to re-enter.
And then, eventually, even like, let's say like this unemployment stuff, like it worked for a bit at the beginning, of course, because the entire country was shut down last March. So it worked for like a month or two. That's fine. But eventually you're going to run out of money. Yep. Okay. Eventually, all of the rich people don't want to pay for this stuff anymore. Even all the people in middle class don't want to pay for this stuff anymore. Like, people don't want to pay for all of this, and you're going to run out of money, and eventually you're not going to be able to afford all of this until you just tax people to death, which is already happening to us here in California. We are literally taxed to death. That's why we have 1 in 5 people in this state living below the poverty line. It's like 20% of people live in, or like 40% of people live in energy poverty, which means they can't afford basic energy needs. I mean, it's a terrible place to live. It's because of high taxes, and it's because we waste all of our money.
Yes. Yeah, and we saw today the headline, wasn't it? Was it like almost 200,000 people left California in 2020, and the population of the state went down for the first time in history?
Yeah, which is awesome. I'm glad.
Yeah,
I'm happy for it.
I mean, the proof's
less
in the
traffic
pudding, right?
on the 405. Maybe I won't get rear-ended this time. Guys, I got rear-ended.
Oh yeah, that's a story.
Yeah,
to
we all
tell.
got rear-ended.
Yeah, Taylor,
Yeah.
Amla, and Sabrina, who was 6 months pregnant, was in the car. This was on Friday, and I got rear-ended. I'm driving, pretty chill day, listening to music, no big deal. We got back from Killer Noodle, Asian place. It's pretty good. And then I'm stopped on the 405, and some chick who's probably texting, I don't know, I don't want to incriminate myself or
Incriminate yourself
or incriminate
her.
incriminate her. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yeah, gotcha.
Don't want to misspeak. Could have been texting or just not paying attention and slams into the back of my car.
Yeah.
Everyone rocks forward, and that was it. Sucked. Really sucked.
It was very jarring. It was my first LA car accident, so
It was my first one too, and I've been here for 4 years.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I expected that to be more so.
Yeah.
Yeah. You would think.
Yeah. Well, the only one I listed on insurance.
Oh, God.
Just kidding.
Just kidding. For the record, everybody,
just
Will
kidding,
Witt
okay?
was just
Yes,
kidding.
I was just kidding. Don't take it out of context, all right? It was
But so we
crazy.
want people like that to leave California as well.
Yes, I'm fine. Yeah, please go. Please go.
People who text and drive need to leave California.
Or just like,
People do that everywhere.
yeah. She was a woman driving. It's like,
oh,
Oh, wow.
it's going to happen eventually.
This video is going to get pulled down for sexism. Right there.
I know.
he always finds a way. He
I
slips
do.
it in there
I do.
eventually.
I
But
had to say
seriously,
it.
who is leaving California? It's the people that are getting taxed to hell, and probably that's the tax base of the state, and eventually you're going to run out of other people's money to give away, and you've driven everyone off with all these policies.
So the people that are leaving California, that is different than other leftist states. California, actually, the majority of people who are leaving and going to other states, like this is one thing, I'll go to Texas or wherever and they'll be like, yeah, well, all the Californians are coming and voting leftist with their policies when they move to a new place. And it's like, actually, out of California, it's mostly leftists leaving, mostly conservatives. Mostly conservatives are leaving California and moving to other states. In places like New Jersey, New York, and Illinois, it's mostly leftists, Democrats, who are leaving those states and moving to places like Texas and Florida. But surprisingly, from California, it's mostly all the conservatives who are leaving the state. It's kind of the opposite of these other leftist places, which is interesting.
Because we're told to, stay and fight, and that's what we are trying to do here at PragerU, but it's a really tough thing to do. It's definitely easier said than done when you're seeing the city around you just deteriorate with the poverty, the homelessness, and then at the same time you are being taxed at such a high rate, and all of the money that you are paying to this state is going towards the very policies that are causing, these detrimental effects in the community around
California just announced today we're giving more stimulus payments to illegal immigrants.
Yeah. It's like, why would you want your money to go towards that? And if you could move to a state where you are taxed less and the money that you are taxed is going towards policies that you actually support, of course, that sounds like a great deal. So it's really hard to stay here and fight as a conservative who is not seeing any of your values come to fruition here in the state.
I have a feeling I'm probably going to get audited after this live. The state of California is going to look at my tax returns and probably have some issues.
Check in with us next Monday to see if Will gets a letter from the IRS.
We're going to see Will getting arrested in the street and dragged off by police.
I know. You Nazis. Get off of me. That is...
So I guess we're going to leave everybody on a cliffhanger today. Is Will going to be audited by the IRS and possibly arrested?
We can only cross our fingers and hope. It's good PR, huh?
Well, that's our show for you today. We went over 3 different stories here, talking about a pastor who was arrested over in Canada, the infiltration of CRT into Disney, and the just lack of people wanting to enter the workforce here in America. So if you guys want to support the work that we're doing, we are trying to change the state of California. Like I said, we are staying here. We are sticking it out and trying to make some change here. If you would like to support us, please make a tax-deductible donation to PragerU. Also, you can like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook. We are also on Twitch at the Will Witt currently. We just joined that today.
Yes. If you guys have Twitch, I have a Twitch channel. I think I used to stream on there a lot, and now I haven't streamed on there really ever, but we're going to try and start it up again and see if we can get some people on there, maybe play some Call of Duty, something like that. You never know. But follow us on Twitch at the Will Witt.
yeah, so we're essentially running game on all platforms. So please check us out and try to support us if you can. We are trying to make some change here.
Running game?
We are running game. You don't like that phrasing?
Guys, we're running game. All right? I'm running mad game.
But anyways, thank y'all for watching. I'm Amala Vanovi.
I'm going to go run some game. Thanks for watching, guys. Will Witt here. Taylor.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.